Hey, this is DawnCheré Wilkerson, and this is Home is Always a Journey podcast. Let's listen in to the conversation today. Well, hey, everybody. It's DawnCheré. Welcome to Home is Always a Journey podcast. We're so glad that you're joining us from wherever you are in the world. Today, I've got my two heroes, my parents, Denny and DeAnza Duron, with me. Mom and Dad, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you?
We're incredible. Wherever you are, if we're with you, we're incredible.
Yeah, we're good right now.
That's how I feel. Today I was thinking about your relationship. How many years have you been married now?
43 and a half.
43.
Yeah.
I thought a fun thing to talk about, we could just dive in, how to keep the love alive. How do you keep the love alive for 40 plus years?
Get married to DeAnza.
Come on, right
That's
answer,
it.
Dad. You guys met later in life, right? And
Yeah, we did.
You weren't teenagers. It wasn't
No.
young love.
No,
What was that like?
Well,
it's kind of like young love,
Except you're older.
except you're older.
it's kind of like you're kind of set in your ways,
Yeah.
and that was an interesting thing. But
You think?
You think? But I was so smitten by him. Honestly, I would say my greatest advice would be marry someone that you're just totally smitten with, because I just love being married to him, and I could kill him sometimes. Reality, we all can get frustrated.
It's not easy.
And-
Marriage isn't easy.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't
No.
kill you, but sometimes
Well,
I am
and-
aggravated.
Well,
at
I
you.
think whether you start young like you did
Yeah.
or older like we did, you still have to understand a few things right up front. And especially if there has been any time for independence to be the demand on your life.
Yeah.
Because, Mom had traveled around the world by herself, but the operative word there is by herself. She was responsible to pack the car by herself.
Yeah.
She was responsible to set the table by herself. She was responsible to pay the bills by herself, to make sure her car ran by herself. And so when suddenly another person enters the circle, it's hard to establish trust that somebody's going to come in and wrest those responsibilities from your hand. So much of what we struggled with was just everyday little minutia, just things that would have been common to probably other
Yes.
people. But I'm going, no, that's not the way to do that. And she's saying, well, absolutely, it's the way to do that. And there is that, it's not as much independence as it is that necessary component of single life, where you've just got to take care of yourself. So now somebody is coming in and you're having to trust them to do all of that,
And they do it differently than
Oh,
you.
yeah, and they do it differently.
Which is
And-
always.
Yeah, which no matter what
It's
age you
always
get married.
Interesting. It's always
yeah.
interesting.
So here you are, 30 years old.
Yeah.
You get married. You've both lived independent lives. You've traveled the world. You've been in ministry. You've experienced a lot of different seasons, but now your lives are one.
Yes.
And you're starting brand new. And I've gotten an up close front row seat
I know.
to your
I know.
marriage
Yeah,
for the
you
last,
did, yeah.
oh my goodness, almost 40 years.
Really, yeah.
And I've seen you walk with joy when you have a lot, when you have a little, when you're going through grief, when you're in the middle of celebration. I've seen you choose love
Yeah.
again and again and again. And I think from the beginning, you made that decision. Sometimes I think that we can have this unreal expectation that leads to disappointment.
Yeah.
That when we get married and our
Yes.
lives become one, that everything is going to be perfect. In fact, some people wait to get married. We
Oh,
can
they
talk
do,
about
yeah.
that for a minute.
Yeah.
Because they think they're going to solve everything
Yeah.
before they get married, so they're waiting to solve it all and then we'll start life together. That's not how life works.
No.
No.
And I think when we were together, in fact, I know, we used to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I would say to her, I said, look, we can't get along. Which meant we didn't fight well.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to solve anything, because not only was there the complication that I'm this independent, single human being, every day I show up to work and 100 guys, when I say jump, say how high.
Yeah. football coach.
Yeah, so I'm coming home and, it didn't go so well coaching the little Italian. It didn't go quite that way. And
There is no
No.
parallel to marriage from the workplace to your marriage. It's this whole different thing that the two of you have decided to walk together.
Yeah.
How was that first year of maturing to
terrible.
live with?
It was terrible.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we were young, and it was terrible for us
in
too.
fact, I'm going to tell you the first 2 years were was very difficult. But then, we just reached. Here's the point. You've got to determine to stay. That little word, stay,
Stay.
is one of the most important principles of life, and it gets lost with other words because it's not an exciting word. Stay. But, I've seen pastors who just jump from one parish to another, one pastorate to another, and they never establish legacy because legacy is only established when you stay. And in marriage, the very first thing I think, and I want you to weigh in on this, DeAnza, but, and I'm not telling you what to do.
I'll do it. Tell me.
I want you to weigh in on this. Staying is the decision you make that makes all the other decisions easier.
Beautiful.
Just, I'm not going anywhere. I'll tell. I'm going to really get honest here, and then you got to tell something honest too. Okay, but don't make it.
I love this.
But here's the
Let's
deal.
dive right in.
But here's the deal. I'm going to make myself the villain, so I don't want you to make me the villain.
How is this?
Because then what happens is I'm the villain of both stories.
Oh, okay.
So
2
I'm
to
going to be the
0.
villain in this
2-0.
story, and then you tell one where you're the bad guy. Okay.
How
I'll try to
is
think
how
of
is this
something.
talking to your daughter about your marriage?
Yeah, I love it.
Today.
It's time. It's time. It's time we talked about it.
Tell me your story. I want to hear it.
Well, I was so upset at her early, and this is during the first year. And so I just stinking stormed right out of the house and slammed the door. It was winter, and I just walked, around the block, and so I stayed gone a while, and then I started coming back, and here she is. She's in her little gown, and she's barefooted, and she comes running out on her tiptoes, grinning from ear to ear. And I'm just storming. I'm just stalking. And she just jumps in behind me, just on her tiptoes. And she just follows me. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, if you're leaving, I'm leaving too."
Oh.
And
Talk about breaking your fit up.
it totally ruined my fit. And I turned around, I picked her up in my arms and took her, back to the house. And, it was one of those moments. That was kind of the way it was for us because we're both very passionate people. So, frankly, the making up time was worth the getting in a fight time for us.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
She goes,
Thank
too
you
much
so much.
information.
Too much
information.
But we all have those moments, and I think it's interesting. Yeah. The Bible says a soft answer turns away wrath.
Yes.
Wyatt just learned that scripture. The kindness, the soft answer, it turns away wrath. It's crazy how when we have those combustive moments where we disagree, the other person's response can completely diffuse.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And my response was immature, because I didn't know how. I'm an only child. I'd always been right in my house with my siblings because I didn't have any, And then
You're an only child.
Yeah, only child. And I'm a head football coach at 24. I've always led everything. I used to go back and I look back on my life and I went, well, wow, I was under authority when it was an adult, but when I was with my peer group, I was always forced into the area of leadership, and my word was law. And so then that's the most unhealthy kind of thing that you can go into a marriage with.
But we've all done it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what age you get married. We've all done that because it's frustrating learning to live in the same house.
It really is.
With someone else. And Mom, you have this uncanny ability that in the middle of tense situations, in the middle of situations that would maybe spin people out, you can see the real problem. It's not the person.
Right.
And I know we'll get to your stories. I know you have your own stories of
No,
mess ups and
that's so
mistakes
good.
too, but like
key.
just coax us right now. How do you focus on what's really going on when you're in the middle of a disagreement?
What helped me, two things, was, first of all, I came in with the deception thought that two adults that loved each other, loved God, whatever the challenge, you could just sit down and talk it out. Just, right? Come on.
Yeah.
And I learned
It sounds nice.
that doesn't always work out
Yeah.
because marriage is much deeper than just a conversation. If you're a person that's jealous or a person insecure
That's
or
so
a
good.
person
Yeah.
whatever, that's how you see it.
Yes.
A conversation's not going to change it.
Yeah.
And you can't always see yourself. The Bible says all the ways of a man are perfect in his own eyes. But God weighs the motives. And so I realized that I thought I was so right, but he was seeing things I wasn't seeing. And I had to learn to trust him. And I had to learn that whatever the challenge was, that's the challenge. That's what we're talking about. That's not him. It's the challenge.
Not him.
So we can attack that, and whether it's finances or the way we discipline the kids or the way we make decisions, whatever. But I don't have to attack him
Yes.
because he's the one person on the planet that said he wants me to spend the rest of his one life. It always tears me up that he has one life, and he wants to spend it with me. I have one life I have to live, and he's got it all. And so when you come back to those basics and you go, okay, we'll solve this later. We're not going to solve it today. Maybe next year, I don't know, next decade, but we're going to keep working on it.
We'll keep working on it.
But the bottom line is I had to learn to make sure that my words honored him and that I didn't come at him with a certain force, because I learned that when I would come at him with too much force, he would come back with force, and then it was like force, and that wasn't good, was it? Wasn't healthy.
Well, and what you're saying is just amazing, actually.
It really is.
I mean, I hope that everybody watching that's married got that, and that you can somehow rewind this or record it and listen to it again, because that really is the crux of the matter.
Yes.
And let me just say this. You're listening to this, you're wondering, I wonder if she really did all that. That's exactly who she has been in this marriage. But what happens is the difficulty is, you're talking about conversations. Okay, say we're going to have a conversation. Okay, who's going to lead this conversation? And is this conversation about you convincing me to come over to your point of view?
Yeah.
When we have a conversation, does your part of the conversation start with, can't you see? Because then you're asking me to see through your lens rather than trying to discover what I'm seeing through my lens.
Wow.
And so,
Seek to see the way they see.
exactly right.
Yes.
And I think that, what has happened with us is that our love has just been so seasoned, and the aging of our love has made it richer, because it's, I don't know, 50 times, 100 times a day that we look at each other and say, I love you and I'm the luckiest man in the world. I told her.
But gratitude is a superpower.
Yeah.
Oh,
It really is. And so, I'm just gonna, let me just say this, because I don't know what else I'm trying to say, but I would just say this, that staying and being in it for the long haul takes you someplace that you never even think is possible until you get there.
Wow.
I mean, the love you hope for and long for is a love that not only has longevity, but it also ages well. I mean, it's just amazing, I think, in our case.
What's the story of your marriage? You just said it. You started really rough. The first 2 years of your marriage were really difficult. And the first year of our marriage was really difficult. But the love and respect that we have for each other now, the grace, I would say it's the grace of God.
Yeah.
That as we both are seeking God, loving God, He gives us a grace day by day. But Mom, you said something so key. You said that you had this expectation that any issue you face, that it could be solved with one conversation.
Right.
And that can leave you really disappointed
Yeah.
if that is what you believe. Because the truth is, I'm reminded of 1 Corinthians 13, it says love is patient. So
yes.
sometimes one of the biggest learning curves in marriage for me, because I wasn't able to do it at first, I had to mature, is that I can have a disagreement and a conversation with Rich, and we can both shelf it. We can go,
key.
okay, we're going into work. We're going to our kids' soccer game. We're going in to spend time with family. We're going to a dinner.
Yeah.
There's going to be time to talk about this.
So good.
But I'm not going to stay frustrated, angry. I love you. I'm committed to you. We're going to work through this. Love is patient. Let's shelf it. Let's come back.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'm going to love you with everything I got.
That's it.
I'm going to speak life over you.
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the biggest game changers
Yes.
in me growing in maturity in marriage. Because like you said, home is always a journey.
Yeah.
We're walking this thing out. We've got some time
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
some conversations. We can work through this.
Yeah.
The more we talk, the more we're going to see it from the other person's
Yes, yes.
perspective. And so maybe people are listening today, I don't know from where
Yeah.
they're listening to in the world, but they just felt like, oh, we haven't been able to solve this. Therefore, my attitude, my frustration, it can't change. My passion can't change.
No.
Well, you're going to live defeated, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to live frustrated and aggravated. You know, what do they say in a typical marriage? It's you love 80% about that person.
Yeah, and then the 20% you're frustrated
that's maybe realistic, but you're 100% in.
That's
you love
great.
100% of that person.
Yes.
You're believing that your two cups of water coming together into one. That takes time, that blending. And sometimes we think, I went through a time in the first part of our marriage where I thought, I don't know if I'm what he needs. I don't know if I fit. I don't know if I really tell him what I really think, he would really still like me.
Would hurt my feelings.
And so,
That's so honest,
that was like
though.
a knife in my back thinking, am I being authentic?
Yeah.
But I was being authentic. I
Yeah.
was just making a wise choice that, you know what? We're not going to solve that part right now. I've got some maturing to do. He's got some maturing to do. But it's not even all about maturing. Part of it has to do with what you're saying, the perspective. He lived 27 and a half years of his experiences. I was 29. I saw things very different. It was just, we were like on different planets on some
Yeah.
ways as far as our perspective. It wasn't just the lens, it was just everything.
Different orbit.
Yeah.
But when I realized this was key, and maybe this will help, but when I realized when he didn't agree with me, he wasn't trying to be mean to me. He wasn't trying to get at me. He wasn't because he was disloyal to me. It's just that this issue, he truly saw it differently. And when I realized that it was okay to disagree and then just go on. Now, I didn't always learn that right off while you're laughing at me, because sometimes, for all you pouters out there, I could pout sometimes.
Yeah, same.
Okay, hush. And so, I had to learn
Dad's
That-
cracking up over here.
pouting is not wise or mature.
It is a revelation, though, Mom.
Yes, it
Honestly,
is.
because it's a revelation that some issues in life you might never agree.
Yeah. Like the way
You know what flipped me? I'm going to tell you something, and I don't know why it took so long for me to get this, but finally she turned to me because I had said something that I thought was very benign, and this had happened, maybe if not regularly, occasionally. And
Once.
and I thought, because I critiqued something, and she got so angry at me. I mean, just
My
so
cooking
angry.
was it?
I know it wasn't not your cooking. You cooked great scrambled eggs.
Don't be
Wonderful.
lying on the.
One thing.
Yeah, and great
That's so
French
bad.
toast.
Yeah, and
She's
French toast,
No,
Mom.
no. Now I'm going to tell you
We
the
love you.
best breakfast cooker in the
Thank you.
world.
You're both great chefs.
Right in for my recipe.
And then we both love to go out for lunch. So there you go. But what I will say is, I said something that was not demeaning, but was a critique, and she just immediately just, bam! I could just tell her little Italian eyes were just popping, and I was in trouble.
It lit her up.
We've all seen that at one time or another for both of us, and she said this. She said, I don't like it when you reject me.
Wow.
And something clicked at me. And I went, okay, I get that. And that was an expression of her love for me, is the fact that she doesn't want me ever rejecting her. And what I somehow was doing, probably with my tone, because I'm famous for my tone, probably with my eyes, because I can scare an alligator back into the bayou with my eyes, then I had communicated that. And what I saw as, or thought was correction or critique, not correction, but critique, actually was being filtered as rejection. And that was intolerable. And so I think right now, we have something that is just continuing to grow. And would we have loved to discover all of those things early on? Yeah, probably. But all I know is that when we finally decided to get married, this is what I knew in my heart. Whatever my life was going to be with this lady, it was never going to be boring. Because she, still to this day, she just is life for me. I mean, it's amazing.
And it's because you both decided to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, you know, what I love your dad, but I love what your dad lives for, the purpose. And so, you know, the triangle that many times they use for marriage, you're here, he's here, God's here.
Yes.
And the closer you get to God, the closer you get to each other. That's a very important picture.
Yes, it is.
It is.
And I admire him so deeply. He's a giving person, just unbelievable. So I respect who he is. But marriage, I think, is synonymous with humility. If you want a good marriage, you're going to have to humble yourself. Yeah. And I had to learn to humble myself and to say, when you say that, this is how I feel. Instead of reacting and trying to get back at him, is to just say, you know, your words are, what you say to me is the most important thing in my life. And when you say that or when you do that, this is how you're making me feel. And I need you to care about that right now. And that didn't happen all the time.
No, I wasn't real good about that. And, you know, that I had to grow into that. I think it's very disillusioning to look back at your past and realize how totally immature you were the whole time you were standing behind a pulpit and telling people how to achieve maturity in God.
I can relate with that. I can relate with that 100%. But it's also on the flip side, so encouraging when you look back and see how different your perspective is.
Yes.
Like how, you know, I look back, I'm like, man, the things that God's changed in me, that I was so blind to, all the things that I know there's even more. It's like you say, it's always like that peeling of an onion. Every layer, there's just more grace of God as we surrender, as we stay, as we're patient, like you said. That creates a love that lasts and a love that's alive, because who wants to stay in something that's dead?
No.
But the fact that you both have decided to pursue God has created this beautiful grace for each other. And the new mercies that God brings you individually while it fills your home. And I love it.
Because I think that forgiveness, you're talking about mercy.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is the currency of a happy marriage. And if you want to have a happy marriage, that mercy does have to flow.
Amen.
And you have to forgive. And when you're willing to do that, then something breaks in you.
Yes.